Another payday without a paycheck. The new reality for federal workers and the show of support from San Diego businesses. Switching parties. Hear why one San Diego Assembly member left the GOP.
If they give you that answer that says, oh, it's never going to happen, that's not your question. If worst case happened, what is your plan? Or what's your plan to stop that?
What could be the worst case scenario at San Onofre and the risk of turning the former plant into a nuclear waste site?
I think that we're creating a harmony between the companies that they provide us service and they do have a right to exist, and that private property owner that just doesn't want them.
Balancing the demand for scooters with people who don't want them around. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. Despite votes in the Senate today, there's still no end to the government shutdown. Competing plans supported by President Trump and Democrats both failed to reach the required 60 votes. 800,000 federal workers will miss another paycheck tomorrow. One of President Trump's cabinet members was widely criticized today for his comments about those workers.
Mr. Secretary, there are reports that there are some federal workers who are going to homeless shelters to get food.
Well, I know they are, and I don't really quite understand why, because, as I mentioned before, the obligations that they would undertake, say a borrowing from a bank or a credit union, are in effect federally guaranteed. So the 30 days of pay that some people will be out, there's no real reason why they shouldn't be able to get a loan against it.
President Trump insists he won't approve any deal to reopen the government unless it has a $5 billion for a border wall. In San Diego, we've seen help for federal workers, be it meals or other assistance. KPBS reporter Priya Sridhar spent the day at San Diego International Airport, where some families were able to get temporary relief.
Ron Gerber is one of the 51,000 TSA employees who has been working without pay since the partial government shutdown began in mid-December. So far, he's missed 2 paychecks and says soon he's at risk of losing his benefits, too.
Well, I've had to dip into the savings. The bills just keep on coming. And if it continues, it's going to get worse. We have health insurance. I have eye care and dental insurance and life insurance. Well, those are going to lapse very soon if we don't get paid.
While it's been a tough month for Gerber and many of his co-workers, today the San Diego International Airport Airlines, along with the Food Bank and the USO, teamed up to offer 500 of the federal workers at the airport a free Hawaiian barbecue lunch.
Today we came together to say thank you to the employees, the federal employees who are coming to work, who are keeping us open for business without pay.
The average TSA worker makes about $35,000 a year, according to the Department of Homeland Security, the agency they work for. Gerber says many TSA workers are having trouble making ends meet. But despite the tough times, he says events like the Hawaiian barbecue helps increase morale.
Looking around here with these people here, they all have smiles on their faces as they're giving us food. And it's amazing that the feeling it gives you as somebody who's not getting paid, that these people are looking out for us.
Gerber says he loves his job and wants to keep working, but also hopes a compromise in Washington can be reached soon. Priya Sridhar, KPBS News.
Democrats picked up a seat in the state assembly today when San Diego's Brian Mainshine switched parties. Mainshine ran for re-election as a Republican. He won by just a few hundred votes. He says his policies align better with Democrats and said the National Republican Party, led by President Trump, is becoming too conservative.
Leaving the Republican Party is not easy. I can either keep fighting to change the Republican Party, or I can fight for my constituents. I choose to use my energy and my skills to fight for the people that I represent. I tried to speak out, and I tried to make myself known that I thought his conduct was reprehensible. immature, counterproductive to what I believed in, what I thought was best for the country. But at some point, you really have to make a stand, too, and say that this isn't somebody that I can continue seeing as a leader of the party that I belong to.
Mainshine represents the 77th district that includes communities such as Rancho Bernardo, Poway, Mira Mesa, Kearney Mesa, and Claremont. Republicans in Sacramento have chosen a state senator from Santee for a state leadership job. Brian Jones will be the state Republican Party's caucus chair. That's second in command behind the state Republican leader. Jones was elected to the state Senate last year in the seat formerly held by Joel Anderson. The Trump administration is rolling out a new policy for processing asylum seekers. Starting tomorrow at the San Ysidro border crossing, migrants will be forced to wait in Mexico while their cases go through the U.S. court system. It's the beginning of a proposed plan called Remain in Mexico. The policy does not apply to migrant children traveling alone or migrants from Mexico. San Diego State University received a record high 94,000 applicants for the fall semester. Only UCLA had more. As Capitol Public Radio's Ben Adler reports, accepted students won't see a tuition hike this year.
As he released his spending plan earlier this month, with more than $500 million in ongoing funding increases for the UC and CSU combined, Newsom was asked if he expected the universities to freeze tuition.
They better, or that money's being taken away and it may revise.
Well, CSU Chancellor Timothy White told his Board of Trustees this week that thanks to Newsom's budget proposal, he won't ask for a tuition increase.
You heard me correctly. Tuition is off the table.
The UC Office of the President says it does not anticipate tuition increases in the coming year, although it adds that discussions about the university budget will continue. Notably, both universities say out-of-state and graduate students are included in the freezes, not just California undergraduates. At the state capitol, I'm Ben Adler.
Paying for college usually involves taking out loans, but what if you agree to pay a percentage of your future income? KPBS education reporter Megan Burks says the concept could soon be used in San Diego.
Income share agreements aren't new, but the San Diego Workforce Partnership is taking a new approach. It's raising money to help San Diegans pay for career training through UC San Diego Extension. And instead of a one-to-one arrangement between a student and a benefactor, the Workforce Partnership wants to pool the money. Students would repay 3 to 5% of their income back into the pool for a set number of years. And that's only if they earn $45,000 a year when they're done with their training. Repayment is capped at 106% of the training cost, about what you'd pay after interest for a federal loan. And if the terms pencil out at less than the cost of training, that's okay. Other income share programs have much steeper terms. The Workforce Partnership is also keeping the fund open to students with criminal records or bad credit.
We're really looking for people who might have some technical competency and always have been interested in technology, but because of life circumstances and financing, maybe never to that traditional trajectory of high school to a four-year college to a tech career, but have a lot of aptitude and interest in starting a career in tech.
The program would be regulated by the California Department of Business Oversight. The Workforce Partnership has raised more than $1 million and is looking to launch with 100 students this summer. Megan Burks, KPBS News.
The military hospital system is in the middle of a major reorganization. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh says it will impact members of the military and their families.
Over the next few years, Naval Medical Center San Diego will become part of the Defense Health Agency. Every Army, Air Force, Marine, and Naval medical facility will eventually become part of the new network. Rear Admiral Raquel Bono says part of the reason is to save money.
The driver for this is how we can best support the Department of Defense in creating a very high level of care that is consistent across the entire military health enterprise.
Bono heads the agency that will eventually oversee all of military medicine, including for families and retirees. San Diego won't be consolidated until next year, but the change is underway, meaning local sailors and Marines who transfer to other parts of the country may find their care will be taken up by the nearest Army or Air Force hospital. This integration started in Iraq and Afghanistan.
And so being able to replicate that at home, as we did on the battlefield, we realized there's some opportunities there of helping our collective military health system become more highly reliable.
Congress mandated the services to begin cooperating the same way throughout the world. The change was initially supposed to happen by last year. The transfer is now scheduled to wrap up by 2023. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
A group of scientists believe we're on the verge of a worldwide catastrophe and that nothing is being done to avoid it. Today, the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists announced the hands of its doomsday clock will remain standing at 2 minutes to midnight. Midnight is the hypothetical global apocalypse. Former Governor Jerry Brown attended the conference, citing nuclear weapons and our current political climate as global threats.
The business of everyday politics blinds people to the risk. We're playing Russian roulette with humanity, and the danger and the probability is mounting that there will be some kind of nuclear incident that will kill millions, if not initiating exchanges that will kill billions. Given that threat, why aren't people more concerned? Because they're not. People feel very comfortable in high places at living at the brink of total Armageddon and catastrophe.
The closest the clock came to midnight was in 1953 when the U.S. and Soviet Union were testing the hydrogen bomb. The future of San Onofre and its nuclear waste is being debated this week by regulators. Southern California Edison wants to resume its work, but KPBS North County reporter Allison St. John says public distrust of the utility is running high.
No one seems exactly sure what the worst-case scenario could be if something were to go wrong at the San Onofre nuclear power plant that's being decommissioned. But Donna Gilmore, who runs a website called sanonofresafety.org, says leaving nuclear waste stored on site is a recipe for disaster.
San Onofre is only 5 miles as the crow flies from my house. And one of those Chernobyl cans exploding, which I know it's not if, but when, which could be not too far off, that we'll be looking at permanent evacuation for probably 100 miles in every direction, depending on which way the wind's blowing.
Ted Quinn, who lives 10 miles from the plant in Dana Point, feels differently.
I wouldn't mind living right next to the plant. No, I don't see a safety concern. I feel just as comfortable there as I would here.
Quinn is a nuclear engineer who's worked in the field for more than 40 years, including 2 years with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission.
This is my home. We've been here for 43 years. I don't have a concern with the short term. As you know, the NRC spokesperson said just a week ago that there is no credible event that can have an impact on the local community from the storage of spent fuel at San Onofre because the fuel has been shut down so long.
You can just see the twin domes of the San Onofre nuclear power plant up the coast behind me. It's 20 miles north of Oceanside and 50 miles north of downtown San Diego. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission says that no credible accident mechanism exists to allow radioactive material to leave the site, given how much the spent nuclear fuel has cooled since the plant shut down.
That is a lie. That is a bald-faced lie. Ask them for their technical evidence of that statement. Ask them for the report. They don't have it.
Gilmore, a retired government systems analyst, says she spent years reading NRC documents and she no longer trusts the agency.
One of their assumptions is nothing could ever go wrong in loading canisters. Okay? So they almost dropped a canister 18 feet, right? They know that the salt air, as well as other things, can cause those canisters to crack, and they know, and I have the NRC's own evidence, that once a crack starts, it will continue to grow through the wall.
Holly Crawford is director of the Office of Emergency Services for San Diego County. She says the agency still conducts safety drills and has teams that can do radiation monitoring.
We still have the capability that we had when the plant was operational. And I think it's important for us to maintain those capabilities. We have independent radiological monitoring teams that can go out and test not only air but environment. And it's my position that it's important to maintain that. If nothing else, for a matter of maintaining public trust, that there is an independent capability to verify whatever it is that the utility is saying the risk is.
But having teams that can check levels of radioactivity around the plant does not reassure Gilmore.
So their plan is to wait until it's too late. Their plan is to wait until the canister breaches, because that's when the radiation levels would be high.
Gilmore says Edison should have contingency plans for what to do in a worst-case scenario.
We have been asking for their contingency plan ever since the plant shut down, and we have yet to get an answer.
Okay, but we have safety margins built into everything, and nuclear has more safety margins than almost anything I know. So the conditions for what you described, you said, is there potential for criticality? There's no potential for criticality. Is there a potential for explosion? There's no scientific basis for an explosion.
If they give you that answer that says, oh, it's never going to happen, that's not your question. Let's get back to the question. If it did happen, if worst case happened, what is your plan? Or what's your plan to stop that? Measuring to see if it's too late is not a plan.
A former chairman of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, Greg Yasko, has reached a similar conclusion. In a recent interview with the public radio program 1A, he advocates for phasing out nuclear power.
Most of the plants do operate safely. They always kind of operate on this precipice of, on the one side is safe operation, on the other side is catastrophic accident. And it's just hard to predict when exactly your foot's going to slip to one side or the other. And that's the challenge with nuclear power.
Yasko told KPBS earlier that Edison should stop loading the radioactive fuel into concrete bunkers by the beach because he believes once the nuclear waste's moved into dry storage, it may never be moved out. This is where Ted Quinn also has concerns.
Even though it's safe to be here, we would like to finish the job. To finish the job means we'd like the fuel to move to another facility. So even though they're licensed for 20 years, they're designed for 100 years, honestly, we never anticipated that they would stay there for long term.
Today, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission held a conference after its special inspection found inadequate training, oversight and procedures caused a near-miss accident at the San Onofre plant. The agency will soon decide whether Southern California Edison can resume loading the fuel into storage next to the ocean. Since the federal government has not found a long-term storage site, it's not clear whether there is any alternative. Allison St. John, KPBS News.
Pacific Gas and Electric is cleared from starting one of the deadliest wildfires in California history, the 2017 Tubbs Fire. Today, investigators announced the cause of the fire was a private electrical system. 22 people died and thousands of structures were destroyed. Although PG&E is off the hook for the fire, the company is facing several lawsuits for its possible role in other devastating wildfires over the last 2 years. Environmentalists are calling on politicians and citizens to help protect the western monarch butterfly. Researchers say the monarch population dropped 86% last year alone. Just 20,000 remain in the wild. Habitat loss, climate change, and pesticides are blamed for the decline.
It's really alarming for them to drop so steadily. One of the reasons we're worried about that is because the smaller a population gets, the more vulnerable it is to extinction. And we don't know how small the western monarch population can get before it collapses, but a recent study estimated that that number is 30,000. So now we're below that.
Environmentalists say planting milkweed and native nectar plants in your yard can help. Those are the plants the butterflies use to lay eggs and feed on. Some of the biggest names in golf are in San Diego this weekend. Torrey Pines is hosting the Farmers Insurance Open. Tiger Woods is among this year's golfers. He's won this event 7 times. Sunny skies are expected through Sunday. Adam Del Russo has details in tonight's forecast.
All things considered, not a terrible pattern shaping up for us here across Southern California. Sure, we had those breezy winds earlier. They'll continue to diminish. We're not done with the wind entirely. We will still have some windy periods through our Friday and through the upcoming weekend as well. But with an area of high pressure off to our north, it is looking to be a pretty quiet and sunny stretch of weather, especially with this offshore flow. It's keeping all of those clouds in that marine layer at bay off the coast, and That's going to lead to a clear sky as we head through tonight. Temperatures dropping down to 52 degrees in San Diego, El Cajon, 48 degrees. Chula Vista, we're down to 50 tonight. Oceanside, a little bit cooler. We're dropping down to 40. There's that area of high pressure over Nevada, bringing those winds out of the north and east, which is a typical Santa Ana setup. So those higher elevations, we're talking gusts 50 to maybe at times 60 miles per hour. But it will come with some sunshine for our day tomorrow. Escondido, 77 degrees, Ramona, 75. So you get into the higher elevations, of course, a little bit cooler, 56. And Mount Laguna, Borrego Springs, 75 degrees, our high temperature. Saturday, that area of high pressure not moving much. It's going to help to get some warmth over to the coastal locations, and pretty much the same forecast for our Sunday as well. The weekend setup remaining persistent. If you want the colder air and the snow, go to your typical locations across the northern tier and into New England. Maybe you're planning on taking a trip that direction. Definitely grab the warm clothing. You won't need it here, though. 75 by the time we head into our Saturday. Even tomorrow, not too bad. 71 with a partly sunny sky. We'll keep that sunshine as we head through Sunday and Monday. A little bit cooler as we head into early next week. Inland locations, even warmer, especially as we head into the start of the weekend. Upper 70s for our Friday, 80 on Saturday. A little bit cooler as we head into Monday and Tuesday with that sunshine. Highs will be in the mid-70s. Mountain locations, higher elevations, a little bit cooler. 56 for both our Friday and Saturday. Sunshine continues with maybe things a degree or two warmer for our Sunday. And then as we take a look at the desert, we're talking sunshine. Temperatures for our highs will be in the mid to upper 70s through early next week. Tuesday, a little bit cooler. Overnight low temperatures will be dropping down into the 40s, maybe a little bit milder as we head into Monday morning. For KPBS News, I'm Adam Del Rosso. Back to you.
Electric scooters are popping up in communities across San Diego. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman says a new company is making sure they don't show up at businesses that don't want them.
I think that we're a part of that check and balance that was never applied in the beginning.
John Heinkel is co-owner of Scooter Removal.
I think that we're creating a harmony between the companies that they provide us service and they do have a right to exist, and that private property owner that just doesn't want them.
Heinkel also owns a towing company and recently decided to start promoting removal of electric scooters from private property. His company posts signs, then notifies scooter operators of areas they can't be in.
Understanding that there are private property rights and that there are places that those scooters shouldn't be, and people have a right not to have them.
Heinkel says since last July, over 6,000 scooters have been impounded. Companies have to pay a fee per scooter plus a daily storage rate to get them back. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
She used poetry to overcome stuttering. She's also the first person in her family to share her migration story without censorship. Jess X. Snow told PBS NewsHour art gave her the courage to speak up.
My parents, they grew up in a government in China that had a lot of censorship. And when I was discovering art for the first time, I felt like there was a door that opened in my family and ancestry, and I could be the first person to tell our story without the fear of censorship. I felt like me reclaiming my voice in the U.S. and overcoming my stutter created a doorway into being able to share my family story to the public. I would get bullied a lot in the classroom, and people would finish my sentences for me. Through my art, I was able to see myself overcoming my stutter. I found a community of poets of color when I was in college, and that was the first time I was able to share my poetry on a stage. When that happened, I stopped stuttering. Imagination is daring to love what is not in front of us. So what then is immigration, if not imagination given a destination? Migration is magic. Of course they are afraid of all who possess it. A lot of my work is inspired by the idea that migration is natural, and I just think a border drawn upon the Earth's skin is extremely unnatural, and when people's families and lives are policed by borders, the result is that young immigrants grow up feeling like their identities are divided and they have to give up like their homelands, they have to give up their connections to their families. Maybe I will have a stutter for my whole life, but regardless, I'm able to accept it, because to be an artist is to create a home for yourself in your work, regardless of how many times your identity has been split, whether by immigration or a speech impediment. My name is Jessac Snow, and this is my brief but spectacular take on why migration is natural.
This was part of our NewsHour's Brief but Spectacular Take series. You can see more of these interviews on pbs.org/newshour. Now here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. On Morning Edition, a safe space to chat about uncomfortable topics. Jada Pickett-Smith talks about the women behind Red Table Talk. And on Midday Edition, Brian Mainshine joins us to chat about switching parties and his top priorities in Sacramento. That's tomorrow on KPBS Radio. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.